Hey gang, this podcast is brought to you by Skull Brew Coffee Company. At this point, most of you have probably heard me mention Skull Brew Coffee Company. It is a business that my wife and I had started to give back more to conservation. So every time we make a sale, a coffee sale, we donate back 10% of the profits of that sale to a nonprofit conservation organization. And right now, in celebration of Earth Day, you can use the promo code Earth Day and receive a buy one, get one 30% off. So you buy one bag of coffee at the regular price. The second bag that you pick up is 30% off. So head over to skullbrewcoffee.com and check it out. Hello and welcome to the Truth from Stan Deer Hunting Podcast. I'm your host, Clint Campbell, and you're listening to episode number 117. Today I'm joined by my good friend, Wilson McSwain, and we're covering a simple question with a complex answer. So stay tuned. All right. What is happening out there, friends? Happy Wednesday to you. Hope you all are doing well, trudging through the work week, one day closer to the weekend. Everybody's working for the weekend. I think someone wrote a song. Speaking of kind of weird, obscure, not maybe obscure, but 80s songs, I went on a huge 80s music kick this past weekend where I listened to pretty much an entire evening of Hall & Oates. And anyone who out there is judging, I just ask you to go turn on some Hall & Oates one evening and just let it soothe your soul. Let it wash over you. This might have had a little bit to do with, I guess, I celebrated a birthday. So first, let me back up for a second. Let me say thank you to all of you out there who took the time to wish me a happy birthday over the course of the past week or so. Definitely appreciate you guys taking the time to do that, even as I turn 1 year older and turn the corner toward advanced age. You guys make it just a little bit easier to tolerate, but I might have an explanation for the Hall & Oates kind of fiasco, if you will. So celebrating my birthday, my wife and I, of course, celebrated over the weekend because it fell during the week. And one of the things that I actually got her for Christmas this year was a session in a float tank. So I don't know if, I'm sure many of you out there listening listen to Joe Rogan, and I kind of got turned on to the idea by him. And for those of you that don't know what a float tank is essentially a sensory deprivation tank. So you're basically in a pool of water that's about 10 inches deep, and it is filled with somewhere between 800-ish to 1,000-ish pounds of salt, of Epsom salts, and it's the water temperature is pretty much the same as your body temperature, because the idea is that you lay in it, you float, and you turn off all the lights and all the sound, and of course all the salt content makes your body float. And because the water is the same temperature as your body, you kind of lose the feeling or the sensation of where your body kind of ends and the water begins. And the idea is that you're supposed to be able to kind of be in there and have complete sensory deprivation, and it allows your mind to kind of clear. And if you are able to do it correctly, and you get into what is called a theta state, and which is kind of like a meditative state where you're conscious, you're not sleeping per se, but your mind is just completely shut off because it doesn't have any of its normal, checks and balances to run. Like, it's not saying, oh, I need to make sure I'm balanced here, or what's this light flashing over here, or what's that slight noise that I heard. There's absolutely nothing going on for you to hear, see, or sense. So it's really kind of a surreal feeling. So we went and did that day on, I guess, Saturday. And when we came back home, we had some dinner, then we ended up going out to eat, and we went and stopped at a winery. And so whenever I came home, I was maybe all vibed out from the sensory deprivation tank, and decided that Hall & Oates couldn't be messed with on that Saturday night. So we listened to nothing but Hall & Oates for the rest of the night. And then it turned into Rick Astley, and then it turned into, whatever other random 80s music that I found on Sirius while I was sitting outside. So that is my story about the deprivation tank and my obsession with Hall & Oates. And then I'm sure we'll dive a little bit more into the deprivation tank stuff at some point whenever John and I get back together and have a chance to chat, because it was super cool. And I definitely recommend anyone out there that has been thinking about trying it to definitely try, because it was pretty rad. I'm definitely going to be a repeat customer at this place because it's just a really cool sensation and a nice way to kind of relax. But with that, we are turning our tide toward turkey season here. This Saturday is the opener here for Pennsylvania, so I'm looking forward to getting out, chasing some birds, hopefully with some success this year. I'm not going to hold my breath on it, but we're going to give it hell anyway. And with turkey seasons upon us, it kind of only felt right that I had my good buddy Wilson back on, as he is basically in my circle of friends, maybe not John withstanding, because John tends to kill birds pretty frequently. And I guess a few of my other buddies that, live out in the Ohio, one of them in Iowa, my buddy Taylor, and in Indiana, he definitely kills some birds. But my Pennsylvania buddy, who is the main turkey slayer that I know, is Wilson. So I figured it'd be a good time to have him on. But we didn't talk necessarily all about turkey hunting, during this conversation. I think I've alluded to, in prior podcasts that I wanted to start making, not a huge shift, but I want to start tackling some topics and some conversations that start to, be a little bit more geared toward lifestyle, and definitely still continue to do the tactical conversations around hunting and strategy and all that stuff, because those are just things that I love. But definitely want to start to, talk to people about topics that might have a little bit more weight to them. And because it is kind of a trial for me in doing that, 'cause it's a little bit of a new approach to a degree. I mean, same format, it's not like the podcast is changing wholesale, but having a friend on like Wilson, who I'm pretty, close with and good buddies with, is always easier to kind of, test the waters with these types of things with someone that you're familiar with, because you kind of you kind of expect, or you kind of know what to expect in terms of their reaction to certain questions and stuff like that. And so that, he and I just have a lot of respect for each other. So the conversations are always good. So that's a long way of saying, we're going to start to talk a little bit more about hunting as a culture. And so we definitely dive into that. We also talk a little bit about, why he hunts. I think that is a question that is, when it's asked, it seems like a really simple question, but whenever you start to actually answer it, the answer is just extremely nuanced. And this is something that I've been thinking about for, I don't know, probably the better part of 2 years, maybe going on 3 years. And at different points, I think I have what my answer is, right? And what I kind of realize is that the answers, is one thing today, and then it can evolve in 2 weeks from now, which is completely fine. But it's a really kind of hard thing to nail down, and because you always, no matter how many times I've had this conversation and I've tried to answer it, not on the podcast necessarily, but every time I leave the conversation, I'm always like, oh man, I really forgot to make this point, or oh man, I forgot to make this point, or I should have said this a little bit differently. It's really hard, for a question that seems so simple, but I think to everyone out there listening is so important to each of us. We always want to do it the justice it deserves. And so what I wanted to start to do was, with certain folks, I wanted to start tackling this question with them, because I think it's just something that we should ponder ourselves, and I've kind of challenged myself to ponder it. And as I was kind of doing that, I was always just kind of curious what other people's thoughts would be, related to that question. So Wilson and I kind of dive into that as well today, which was a super cool conversation. Always like having Wilson on. He's a good buddy of mine. And without further ado, we're going to go ahead and get right to it and get Wilson on. All right, folks, welcome back to another episode of the Truth from the Stand Deer Hunting Podcast. And today we're doing a little impromptu podcast with my buddy. You know him, the man, the myth, the legend, the man with the mustache.
It's mustache season.
Wilson. It's always mustache season. Mustache is a weird word. Mustache. Moustache.
It's one of my favorite words, though. So
is it one of your favorite words? Yeah. Are you going to get the twist for turkey season?
No, just that kind of Wyatt Earp, just like people don't know if you're trying to do something with your mustache or you just broke your razor.
Or just continue with your homeless chic kind of vibe.
Yeah, I lost my broom at home, so I just used my face just to...
You need the walrus for that, like the big push broom style.
Yeah.
That would be pretty nice. When I was rocking the full beard for a while, I was thinking of doing the twist, but the wife was totally ixnaying that. She wasn't feeling it. Where'd my coffee go?
It's over yonder.
Over yonder. I'm going to walk over here and get my coffee. So if you can't tell, I'm with my buddy Wilson McSwain. You guys heard from him. in December. We got on the podcast here and we talked a little bit about deer hunting. Half full of water, I think we even mentioned. I don't even remember where that came from.
Optimism versus pessimism versus realism.
Yeah. I live in a world of reality, so mine is usually half empty.
Yeah.
But I'm working on the optimism piece of it. But today, Wilson and I got together to go have we haven't had a chance to hang out in a little while, so we rendezvoused at a coffee shop, had a little coffee, and I just happened to have my podcast stuff with me in the truck. And I was like, hey, you know what? We should probably just roll and do a podcast since we haven't had a chance to catch up in a while. And there's a couple interesting topics that I think we want to kind of cover. We're going to talk a little turkey hunting, I think. Ooh. So why don't we start there, man? Because I know you're all about the birds.
Yeah.
I sometimes think you might actually be more about the birds than the whitetails.
Oh, it's tough because I don't necessarily think about turkey hunting during deer season.
Right.
But I think about a lot of other things. But when turkey season happens, I don't think about anything else. Like, I'm not looking for sheds. I'm not scouting for deer. It's just
turkeys
for the gobble.
Yeah.
And and I think I've told you before, I have more fun now watching people get to shoot birds that have never shot a bird before, or experience a turkey close and hear the sounds that you don't get to hear unless you're close to birds,
right?
Than I do actually shooting one myself.
Unless you're with me, then we just don't see birds.
But this would be the year. Hopefully, we said it last year, but
yeah, we say it every year. Well, that's the thing. It's our mode of action, or how it works out when you and I hunt, is that we'll both independently be seeing animals, critters, whatever we're hunting, right? And maybe I get a shot, maybe I don't, whatever the case is. And then we'll be like, hey, you know what? Late season for deer season, we'll be like, let's go hunt. I got this place.
Yep,
there's
loaded.
does there every evening. You know, let's fill some doe tags here at the end of the year. And then without fail, we go and we hunt together, and we literally see 0 animals.
Yep.
0. And it's happened to us 2 years in a row for turkey season too, I think.
Yep.
Last year with Trevor, we took him out, sold 0 turkeys, and then literally the next day you started your mayhem.
Yeah, I took a buddy. He killed his first spring bird. I think the next day, then following weekend, I killed a bird, and then just the list goes on.
And then you were in a couple states too.
Yep, I went to New York last year.
Killed a bird.
Yeah, well, my buddy killed a bird, which was awesome. He'd never killed a turkey before, so again, first time turkey hunter, killed a bird, and then I kind of did an impromptu trip to Minnesota to see a buddy and realized that there was a small piece of public like a couple miles away. So I actually got a tag first. I had 2 days left. I got a tag. Went to, I think it was about 15 acres, just basically a field.
Mm.
And you had to use steel shot because it was close to the water. So it was like a waterfowl conservation area. So you had to use steel shot. So I actually had to buy a new choke. I don't know. It was weird. Anyways, get on there, bird gobbles. They start working towards my decoy, and all of a sudden, out of nowhere, a shot rings out. I'm getting ready to shoot this bird, and a shot rings out, and the bird dies. Well, I guess after I had got there, some guy and his son parked at a different lot, walked back through the woods, and set up in between me and the private, and I called this bird right past him.
Oh, geez.
They had no camo, no decoys, just standing behind a tree and a shotgun. I don't know. I don't even know if they had licenses, to be honest. But this kid, it was like the best day ever, and they thought they were surrounded by birds. They're like, we knew there was one in the field to our left.
That was you calling?
Yeah. Well, and then I had a decoy, and I'm glad they didn't shoot that the decoy.
Right.
And so I ended up going the next day, which was the last day, and killed one of the best birds of my life. Double beard, coolest colors, super old beard, or old bird, which was fun.
Right.
Yeah, that was awesome. And then I came back and killed another PA bird, which was sweet.
Yeah, man, you kill a lot of turkeys. Like, I'm the world's worst turkey hunter, admittedly. You're probably one of the best turkey hunters I know. Like, as far as like, you seem to always be able to get on birds and kill birds. I know we were talking about the opener around here, which is it April 27th? Is that the opener?
Yeah.
The 27th? Okay. That's what I was thinking. Because I'm trying to decide whether or not if I'm going to hunt around here for birds, or if I'm going to head back to one of the farms, because I know where they roost on the farm. they're at the same spot every year or whatever, whether or not you can get one to work to you or not. I've tried to hunt them coming off the roost because they oftentimes like to land in this one field off the roost, and I'll set up a blind and hunt there. But whenever I do that, they end up flying over the field and going down into the hollow behind it, and then they'll work their way up toward this other ag field.
Okay.
And that's what happened 2 years ago when I was there. And then my buddy that was over on that side ended up killing, and I saw 0 birds.
Yeah.
So then the other year, not last year. Well, I guess that was 3 years ago that happened. Then 2 years ago when I was there, I sat on the other side and I had a bird working into that other field, and then a rainstorm came through, blew everything out, and that was pretty much game over after that. So I'm thinking of going back there, but I did just do some scouting, and we can talk about that. I was doing a little deer scouting. It's an area actually of public that is supported by the NWTF, so they help fund that.
Is that a gang or no? I'm just kidding. I know. And just NWTF. Whenever I hear that, I'm like, whoa.
Well, it's actually an offshoot of NWA, the rap group from from the 90s.
I'm not familiar with them.
Yeah, let's not pull those lyrics up.
Yeah.
But which is really cool because they've helped fund some of that. Like the habitat is really, really good, and they actually have some food plots in there and some corn, and it's just really brushy and nasty. So
is it close to the road? Like, is it really easy to access?
It is pretty easy to access. Yeah. There's of course like a tractor path or like a road for, some equipment to get back in there and stuff like that, which it actually is on like the edge of the property, which makes it nice even for deer hunting. Cause I was scouting it for deer hunting. And when I saw that sign, I was like, oh, I bet they have some pretty decent habitat in here for birds then. And so I was like, maybe I try my luck here. Saw some good deer sign, and that road is just really kind of convenient because it's at the edge of the property. You're not walking through anything that is that would be huntable that you would hunt, because I'm not going to hunt the food plot or whatever.
Yeah.
And it's pretty quiet too. So as long as you have a good wind, you should be good getting in that road, and then you can get to the back side of the property a little bit more quickly and a little bit more quietly, that's where kind of all the sign was that I found, which is where I kind of want to probably focus my hunts. But I think I'm going to turkey hunt there this year.
That'd be sweet. And I like those places are awesome to see if you can get access through the private. Because deer hunting, their guard comes down a little bit, and then you just want to walk through their property to hunt the public.
Yeah.
It's nice because then you get different vantage points to get in on birds that you might not be able to going down the same path that everyone else is going.
And I did see some scratching and stuff in there, so I could tell that there were birds.
Scratch.
Yeah. So I could tell that there were birds in there.
Yeah.
I just haven't had a chance. Unfortunately, I didn't have any cameras with me while I was out there, because I guess my plan, I'm definitely going to put some cameras in there for deer season, but I don't know that I'll get back out there yet in time to put a camera up to see if there's any birds. I'm not really sure which. So there's like 3 food plots they kind of have set up. Like when you first walk into the property, if you can imagine it just as a square, the road, like the access road is on the left-hand side, or like where they would bring the tractors in or whatever, the equipment. And then off to your right-hand side, there are small food plots that are maybe only like 50 yards wide, 30 to 50 yards wide, depending. Like there's 3 of them, they're different sizes, and they're maybe 75 yards long. You know what I mean? So like it's close. Just imagine maybe a football field. Might be the easiest way just to imagine it. And there's one right at the front, like almost as soon as you go in, right? And then there's like a buffer strip of timber, like off to like the left side of it if you were walking down as you entered it, right?
Got it.
So, and that's probably 25, 30 yards wide, right? And then there, on the other side of that, there's another field about the same size. And then there's another buffer strip of timber. That's about the same width, right? It's about 30 yards wide by about 100 yards long, right? And that feeds into like a swamp area basically. And then after that, there's yet another field, right?
Okay.
And then there's just timber then after that or whatever. So I could see where there was, turkey sign, but I'm just not sure which. If I were going to hunt around one of those fields and maybe set up some decoys or something like that, I'm not sure which one I would focus on necessarily. Because I don't have any intel as to are they strutting in this field or versus the back field or whatever the case is. So I think my game plan is probably just get there early in the morning, do a little calling, and see if I get anything to respond, and then start to move toward it and set up in one of those field areas, maybe set up a decoy, and then try to get it to come in.
Yeah.
That's probably what my strategy is going to be. Don't know how good of a strategy it is, since I'm not a great turkey hunter.
Any strategy is a good strategy.
Right. As long as I have a plan.
Yeah.
And it's all that matters, I think one of my favorite things about turkey hunting, man, is that, you and I have talked about this with waterfowl hunting.
Yeah.
Is that for me at least, like my stress level goes down.
Mm-hmm.
You know, where I'm not as I'm excited to go hunt, but it's not. I'm not all freaked out about it.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Like where I'm like looking at trail camera pictures every day, trying to figure out what this deer is doing, and you know, it's just like.
Well, that's what I do, unfortunately.
Yeah, I know. It's like there's no.
I got all
for
these
you.
cameras out right now on places where I know there's turkeys, because on our area, all the places I turkey hunt, similar to deer hunting, it's small places.
Yeah, you do a lot of small parts. I mean,
Yeah.
we talked about that last time that you were on. It's like you do a lot of small
we killed
parcel hunting.
2 birds in PA on a property that's like less than 2 acres. I have to get permission from like 4 different houses to be able to shoot a gun there, because it's within a safety zone.
Yep.
So I have written permission from all these houses, but it's a best spot. You know, it's like a little throughway that the birds come through and hit the sun, and it's like timeable,
right?
Which is nice. And then a lot of the other spots are not as predictable, but I just like to see what birds are there, because it's like sometimes you'll be like, oh, people go, man, there's like 20 birds here, and you go, and there's 20 jakes,
right?
And
well, they don't know the difference, right? They're just like they see
or there's
turkeys,
15 hens,
right?
Which you're gonna get a long beard at some point, theoretically. But it's like I don't necessarily have the time to just go there every day to the same spot and wait, like deer hunting.
Yeah.
So, like sometimes I'll turkey hunt like 6 different spots in one day.
Right.
So like go in the morning, hunt. Okay, nothing, no birds located. Move to a different spot. Try to locate a bird. Move to a different spot. Walk a power line to try to find a and once you can locate something, then it's like game on.
Right.
So.
Yeah, I mean, you go at it much harder than I do. You know, like for me, turkey hunting, it's like, just so everyone out there listening knows, in full disclosure, I would classify myself as an opportunist and a recreational turkey hunter, where, you know, I mainly do it just to get out and be in the timber, and just to be able to be outside for a little bit. Take my daughter if she's interested in going. This year, she said she's not interested in going, which bums me out, but I'm not pushing her to go, because at some point I want her to ask me again to go. So I'm not, you know, making her, no, we're waking up super early. That's her biggest gripe. Like she doesn't mind going. She just doesn't like to get up early.
Yeah.
And when I was 10, I didn't like getting up early either. I mean, my dad forced me to get up to go hunt, like whenever I was of age.
Yeah.
You know, because he's like, this is just something you're going to learn to do. And unfortunately it didn't ruin it for me. You know, it's like, I loved it, but you know, I still didn't like getting up early. I have to admit, like there was often times that I just fell asleep on the ground, like during hunting season. You know what I mean? Where I would take a nap.
Yep.
You know, and I mean, look, I still do that during deer season. I'm not ashamed to admit. It's like I will catch a 15-minute power nap in my saddle, like no problem. But those are my turkey hunting plans. What states you hitting this year, man? I don't know if we even talked about that.
Pennsylvania. I got license in Jersey. New York. So Jersey, PA, New York, and then Minnesota is still a possibility.
Really?
Yeah.
Going back out to visit your buddy?
Yeah. One of my good buddies lives out there, and it's a possibility. Like, it'll probably be like last year where I'll go, oh, I'm free this weekend.
Right.
And then try to find a ticket and get out there.
Right.
It was nice. Minnesota, I was surprised at how much property, public land there was.
Really?
That was the first time I really used any sort of like app or map to find public land.
Right.
Because here it's pretty well marked, the spaces I've been.
That when you live around here, it's like you'll be driving down the road and you'll see the PA State Game Commission signs.
So I set up on the place where I'd almost killed the bird the day before, and there was a bird just gobbling and hammering across the street. But it was just like a hay field and one hedgerow in the corner. Again, probably another 15 acres. So I go on the map. Actually made an email to get another free trial.
Nice.
Which probably is not good to say, but I was like, I need this right now, and I only need it for right now.
Right.
And I still use that email today, if anyone's wondering. But I see that where that bird was on private, but there was another basically 10 acres of public across the street.
Right.
So I pick my stuff up, run across the street. No, I can't hear the bird. I put my decoy in the ground, and then I hear just a bird hammer, and he's like 15 feet from me behind a rose bush.
Right.
And it was like a hedgerow of like rose bushes, basically. And so I jump into the bush, which at the time I didn't realize was a rose bush. And I get so torn up.
Right.
And my feet are halfway out into the grass, and the decoy is like 4 feet from my toes, and he struts right up to the decoy. And I was like, this is unbelievable. Last day, just how it all worked out, I shoot and I miss. And he just sticks his head up. Like
at 4 feet, you missed.
Yeah, it was embarrassing.
I'm glad you're telling it here. No one listens to this, by the way.
I cut real hard so he would come out of his strut. He was strutting hard. He puts his head up. But the way I was laying, I'm like laying on my left shoulder in this bush, shooting the shotgun from my right shoulder, trying to lean my head up. It was just awkward. I miss, and he just like runs about 10 feet and stops and like looks back like, what just happened? And I was like, oh man, boom. And I shot him on the second shot. But
jellyhead.
Yeah. When it was close, it's steel. It was a different choke that I'm not used to. I'd never shot it. So I'm like, oh, 4 feet. This is a chip shot. Pew, right over his head. He was like, what in the world just happened?
What's crazy, though, is he didn't just completely bust out of there because, you know, they don't get the nickname Nervous Turkey for like...
Well, when I shot, he kind of like flew up a little bit and then came back down, kind of like you'd see a pheasant like fly up and then fly down.
Right.
So he flew up and landed probably 10 or 15 feet away and then just stopped for a second.
Right.
And I had enough time to...
Do you remember Minnesota? That was Minnesota, right?
Yeah.
What day of the week was that?
I'm
trying to set up a segue here.
Okay. It was, I know it was midweek. I want to say it was a Monday.
Oh, okay. Interesting. All right.
I'm not sure, though. I could be wrong. I could check.
The reason I was trying to set up a segue to make this seem like we're professionals is there's been a lot of chatter, of course, in PA about Sunday hunting. Actually, I don't know. Have you ever met Galen?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, I bought a backpack from him.
Oh, you did?
Yeah,
okay.
We met. Hey, dude, if you're listening. No, he was selling a backpack that I really wanted, so I bought it, and we spent a lot of time at the Backcountry Hunters and Anglers.
Okay, yeah, actually, I do know that you met him because he had mentioned that you guys ran into each other, and he was like, "Hey, I met your friend Wilson whenever you had." Yeah, so he came over to the house.
It literally, I'm looking at my phone right now. It was a Sunday.
It's perfect segue. Awesome.
It literally was a Sunday.
You know, he's mentioned this on his social platform, but he's working on a documentary around Sunday hunting, and you can check his social platform for when this will come out for those of you out there listening. Because I'm not exactly sure of the dates or whatever, but he and I kind of spoke to get my thoughts on a few things. I was just curious, man. What do you think of Sunday hunting?
I love it. I love the idea of it. Since I did not grow up hunting, this idea of being in Pennsylvania where there is no Sunday hunting was very weird to me. Mm-hmm. Like, why would you regulate something I can't do on a day of the week?
Right.
And I was surprised actually that more people didn't hunt on Sundays. Like if somebody said, you can't drink coffee on Mondays, it would be like, I'm still drinking coffee on Mondays.
Right, right.
But to see the respect level where people go, it's a law.
Mm-hmm.
This is who we are. We abide by those laws, and I'm sure there's people that hunted on Sundays.
Yeah, I'm sure that there are, but you're right. It is interesting that they just kind of took that as like, for the most part, right?
Yeah.
Like you said, I'm sure there are some guys who are like, hey, this is the only day I have
There's
off during
always
the
gonna
week.
be.
I own
Yep.
my own property. No one's going to see me. Like, not that it makes it right
Yep.
or whatever. Not condoning it, but it is interesting that people just kind of bought into it.
Yeah,
And
I think the accessibility that it'll allow for people. For especially as a dad now, for a father to take out like a kid or a mentor or a youth on a Sunday, because right now a lot of those guys only have one day to hunt on the weekend.
That's it. Yeah.
And so they're going to give that day up to take a youth or another adult that's never hunted. I don't think so.
Right.
So giving them another day for that is awesome. Now for me, my days off are Saturday and Monday.
Right. Yeah.
So my weekend, quote unquote weekend, I work all day Sundays, so I never really ran into an issue. Like, I can't hunt Sundays. Even if they make it legal, it's just not going to happen.
Right. Or if it did, it would be very rare.
Yep.
To where it's like you just in full disclosure, like you work as a youth pastor.
Yep. I work at a church.
So your Sundays are spoken for.
Yeah.
And you might be able to, if there's not family obligations for some reason after church, it's like you might be able to get out once in a blue moon, but it's not going to change.
We'll see attendance go down at church on Sunday. But no, but I think, man, just the opportunity to give people another day in the woods. And this is coming from a guy that's not going to hunt on Sundays.
Right.
Like, I've met some guys who won't hunt on Sundays and they're against it.
Right.
But I think it comes from a little jealousy of well, I can't be in the woods, so I don't want anyone to be in the woods.
Right.
Man, I would love for that opportunity for
for
another
everyone.
day. Yeah.
Yeah. No, I think so too. And I'm not going to give away like some of the stuff that Galen and I talked about.
Yeah,
in
I'm
his
really pumped for that to come out.
I'm pretty stoked. It's he's taken this on himself, which is, I mean, if anyone out there knows him, he's a supporter of, big supporter of conservation and just representing hunting the right way. And so I appreciate his efforts. I appreciate anybody who's doing something to kind of voice a message that's important. And it sounds like, fingers crossed, it sounds like there's good movement, as they say.
More movement than it's ever gotten.
Yeah.
So.
Yeah. I mean, I'm not going to jinx it, but I'm hopeful. It's something that, when you travel to other states and you hunt, like when I go to Ohio, I mean, that's one of my favorite things about going to Ohio is whenever I take a 2-week trip to Ohio to hunt, it's like I can hunt the full 2 weeks.
Same with
what I mean?
Minnesota and Jersey, New York.
Pretty much everywhere.
You don't go like, oh man, I can't hunt, So like when opening day is on a Saturday, you can hunt Saturday and Sunday and go on Friday and come home Monday morning, and it's a really nice trip.
Yeah.
But I think one of the things that Pennsylvania hunters need to be ready for, prepared, is this idea that if it is legal on Sundays, it's not going to be what you thought it was. Like I don't think it's going to just be like free reign where, all right, all things go on Sunday. I think we need to be prepared when they say, we're going to Sunday hunt for early archery and gun season. Right. And then end it.
Well, I think
I think there's going to be some variations or
there's going to be some testing and some trade-off that's going to happen. Like right, that's with anything. And
maybe it's youth, and maybe it's once a month.
Right, and that's what I've kind of heard, and there might be official information out there, and I'm not the most well read on this topic. It's like I understand it well enough, or I understand it as a from a very high level. I guess I should say, but what I have kind of heard through the grapevine and kind of spoke to some folks who are more in the know than me, is that it most likely, to your point, is going to roll out in some type of trial capacity where it's like you're going to be able to hunt one Sunday a month or 2 Sundays a month or, one Sunday a month during archery season. And then we're going to allow like one Sunday during rifle season. It's like, so there's going to be, to your point, it's not going to be like full on, like, here you go. Because I think it's important that whatever, hopefully, fingers crossed, it does roll out in some capacity. But I think you're going to have to have a show of good faith to those who oppose it. That it's not going to fundamentally change everyone else's life per se, because that's what they're worried about. And I think some of the concerns that they have are unwarranted. I'm not going to go through like the list of them or whatever, but I think you do need to make sure that I'll just go back and say we are outnumbered as hunters. And we enjoy the privilege. It's not a right. It's a privilege to hunt by the grace of others, the other 96% of the country that lets us do it. So I think we always kind of have to keep that in mind and always put the best foot forward and basically say, if we're allowed to do this, let us prove to you that it's going to be okay. Right. And I know that we can look at pretty much any other state and say, look, it's okay in these places. Right. But just think about your own personal life. If your son or daughter came home, right, to just make it very contextual and said, hey, I'd like to get my nose pierced, my cheek pierced, and like my face all pierced up, right? I'm going extreme here, right? And their rationale was,
I just bit my tongue on accident. Did you thinking about that? Ow.
So if their rationale was, well, everybody else is doing it and they're fine, right? As a parent, you'd be like, yeah, but I'm not buying that, right?
If your friends jumped off a cliff, would you?
Right, that old saying, right? But if they came to you and said, hey, I would like to get a second ear piercing, right? Can I start with that? You're much more likely to say, okay. And then whenever I realize you're mature enough to understand that, like, you don't need to look like a tackle box. You know what I mean? It's
for real.
like,
did you fall into my fishing box?
Right.
What's up?
Then you're like, okay, cool. You're mature enough to handle these decisions, right? I think it's similar in this, that it's like we have to prove as a group. And it's somewhat unfortunate that we have to, right? But it's like the circumstances are what they are. As we were talking about at the beginning, I'm a realist. The reality is that we still have to prove it. You know what I mean?
That's why if they give us an inch, in the sense of they loosen up a little bit and give us an inch, we cannot right away push for the mile.
Right. Well, we have to earn the mile. Like that's and that's just the way it is. I mean, I know I'm sure there's people out there thinking like, well, I should be allowed to hunt whenever because it's for whatever reason, right? But I just look at it from a position of reality that these things are earned, especially when you don't have them and they aren't rights per se, right? It's like, again, it is a privilege. And so if we want to extend our privilege further, then we have to prove it to those who are going to be the ones that allow us to have it, have the extension, right? And I don't think it's a bad thing. You know what I mean? I think it also gives hunters an opportunity to really position ourselves in a really good light.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? It puts a little bit more focus on us.
Yeah.
Which can work in our advantage and can work to our disadvantage. It just depends on what type of interactions we're creating with people, right? So it's like if they Sunday hunting and all of a sudden, like, one of the concerns is maybe more trespassing happens, right? I'm a believer that trespassing is going to happen whether it's a Saturday or a Sunday. So to me, it's like that is kind of not a non-issue or a non-point. But if all of a sudden, if the perception is all of a sudden, like, you know, a farmer or whomever is like, I never have trespassing during the week or on Saturdays, but every Sunday, Joe down the street has the day off and he's always on my property.
Yep.
You know what I mean? That's unfortunate because then it looks like, as the whole, we're trespassing to that guy.
Yep.
Right? Sunday hunting is bad. That's not really the issue. The issue is Joe's a jerk.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? That he's not following the rules, right? So
call me, I'll come take care of Joe.
Right. Nice. But the one thing we were talking about earlier, man, I know we were while we were having coffee, I was mentioning I'm doing a little barbecuing this weekend. I'm going to try using my coffee for the first time as a rub, and you had mentioned that you were you're partaking of the Traeger move.
Yes. Yeah, I always years and years ago, I went to our state fair in Washington.
Washington.
Yeah.
Is that how they say it out there?
No.
Oh.
That's how visitors say it, and we laugh at them. In Washington State. And I went to the state fair, and we're going through like the commercials aisle where they got all these things for sale, and we go by this grill section, and I'm looking at this grill. My wife and I just got married. We didn't have a grill, and she had a full-time job. I had a full-time. We were like, what can we spend our money on? And so I'm like, man, I need this grill. And my wife, the guy goes, you can bake a cake in this smoker. And my wife was like, we need this smoker. So I'm looking at the price tag, and I was like, I'm just not doing it. Well, I regret not buying it back then because we grill all the time.
Right.
I mean, I grill in the winter. It'll be snowing outside, and I'm grilling. It's just, I like to do that.
Yeah, I grill a lot too.
Yeah, and I'm not like the guy who's like, oh, I'm the best griller in the world. I could be the worst griller in the world for all I know.
Right.
It's just my favorite mode of cooking.
Right.
So
less to clean up in the house too.
Yeah. Yep. And there's always smoke, and it always involves bacon, and then the house doesn't always reek when you got visitors over. They're like, what died in here?
Right.
And what smells so good? I'm like, I don't know. So
it's what you're eating.
Yeah. So I somehow got a connection to get a discount on a Traeger. So I'm like, it's happening. And it's there's technology in it, which is crazy. I don't really know much about it yet. So when it comes, you have to have like a PhD to put it together, I think.
Right.
And so I'll be putting it together, and then we have one moose tenderloin left.
Ooh.
And so it's kind of like,
dude, that moose was so good too.
Oh man,
dude, love it.
Yeah,
I actually use a Smoky Mountain. I was kind of making fun of you a little bit for
going and I was like,
route.
I'm not gonna get. Everyone's getting a Traeger. It's like Traeger bandwagon right now. No offense to anyone, because they're great. They're great smokers.
Yeah, look, I've never used one, so I can't speak from a point of expertise.
Yeah.
But I will say it's like I have a friend who is way into smoking food, and we're getting way off the topic of deer hunting and turkey hunting and hunting in general. He is way into smoking food, and so I've kind of learned from him. I let him kind of not be the guinea pig, but like he's super into it. Like how I watch.
He's your sensei.
Yeah, it's like what I watch on YouTube is like I'm infatuated with anyone who's a good drummer. So I watch drumming videos all the time on YouTube. He watches barbecuing videos all the time, like learning new recipes and stuff like that. So he did a bunch of research and ended up getting the Smoky Mountain, like the Weber, because it was stacked up pretty closely to the Green Egg. Yeah, which is like ridiculously expensive, more than I'll ever spend on a smoker. Yeah, but the Smoky Mountain was like a nice kind of like a lot of guys that are pros at barbecue or whatever, like they use those. So I was like, all right, cool, good enough for me. And then he had one, and we used it, and it was killer. So I was like, all right, check, I'm doing that. And there's just something about working like the fire and the coals and stuff like that I just kind of get into, especially like when the weather's nice. It's supposed to be nice Saturday, so I'm gonna go out. I'm gonna do a brisket rubbed with our coffee with going to use that as like part of the rub, and I'm doing ribs too.
Sweet.
So I'm pretty jacked about trying that out.
Yeah.
But so if you're free Saturday.
I am helping my neighbor put up a fence on Saturday. Not in between me and him, but in between.
I was going to say.
No. In between him.
I don't know that I would help that guy.
And his neighbor. Yeah, it's going to be awesome that he finally has some privacy, and now I don't have to break down. And anyways, yeah, he was like, I'm building this fence. I was like, I can help you.
Nice. Does he have ground to hunt?
No.
Okay.
Right. No.
So you're just doing it.
There is no ulterior motive other than
I was gonna say,
he's a nice guy. His kids are the same age as my kids.
Nice.
Not everything I do is for hunting ground.
Right. Well, it's not a bad thing if it is necessarily either,
Yep.
But one of the other things we were talking about, man, was again, we had coffee shop talk, and we kept saying, "Oh, we have to talk about this on the podcast.
Yep.
Oh, we should talk about this
on the
podcast." Down. And this is something that, for anyone out there listening, if you've listened to any of the past episodes with Cody DeQuisto or whatever, he and I started touching on this a little bit with John. And I think even we talked about it maybe just a little bit with Chad too when we had the larger group at Harrisburg, is the idea of extreme sports kind of. Well, let me ask you this. I kind of want to ask this question, and maybe I'll ask it in social media, because I put out a question or a poll that was asking how many folks out there who hunt also kind of grew up either participating in extreme sports or are continuing to participate in extreme sports. And by that I mean skateboarding, snowboarding, BMX, motocross, MMA, basically anything that is a solo mission, anything that is like you and one other person. And you and I started talking about it a little bit, where it seems like there's this. So there's two things, and I have a theory, I guess, that I don't know how I would ever substantiate it, or if I ever will. But looking at hunting as a whole, right? It started dawning on me probably more as I started going to like some of these trade events, right? So ATA and Harrisburg, of course, as well. Yeah. Harrisburg's a little different, but like looking at ATA, because that's really where the industry is, right?
Yeah. That's the Archery Trade Association.
Yeah.
Correct.
That event. Yeah. And just also looking at like social media and the content people are putting out and stuff like that. Like I kind of started thinking about the idea that, I think that the demo of hunting is changing, right? I know we can look at the stats from QDMA and some of the game and fish studies that happen, like the age groups of hunters and the hunter numbers are dwindling. But I think what would be interesting is looking more specifically of what's that, the hunters that are coming in, like, are we losing hunters because, there's not access? Because we're doing a lot to like work for access with folks like BHA and stuff like that, right? So there's that. I do agree that the access maybe is diminished from maybe when I was growing up, just because I think people have bought up a lot more land, so there's a lot less land that's open. Hunters or farmers maybe aren't as willing to let people hunt their ground as they were when I was growing up, or people are building more fences as you are,
building fences.
So I understand that access might be an issue, and most likely probably is contributing to it. But I was wondering, with the younger group of hunters that are coming up, because as I was going to some of these shows and observing, it's like I'm seeing some of these hunters, especially, guys who are, like turning more toward that public land, like the challenge of it, right? That it's like they almost have like this extreme sports background.
Yeah.
To a degree, right? Because it's a younger audience. Like it's not, I'll just say it for me personally. It's like whenever I look at guys or girls out in the hunting industry, it's like the Terry and Mark Drurys of the world, great hunters.
Yeah.
And no disrespect to them whatsoever.
Yeah.
They just don't trip my trigger.
Yep.
Like they didn't really grow up like I grew up in it. They don't hunt like I had to grow up hunting.
Yeah.
And even now, the way they hunt is just a world apart from how I approach hunting.
Yeah, which is not wrong. It's just different.
It's just different, right?
Yeah.
And so I'm looking at it going, in where we're getting hunters from, or where we're recruiting hunters from potentially, isn't necessarily going to continue to be, and I don't think it's as much as it used to be, always rural America per se either, right? It's like, take, my age range, for example. I'm 40 years old. Right? Old man now.
Wow.
Yeah, I know. Get out of town. But I grew up in an era where, skateboarding was really big, right?
Yep.
So I skateboarded growing up. I snowboarded growing up. I had a bunch of friends who were BMX riders. I rode motocross, I raced a little bit. It was never like professional. It was just amateur stuff
Mm-hmm.
around where I grew up. I'm into MMA,
Yeah.
stuff like that. So there's these sports that are much more like solo missions that I grew up with, right? And now I live in the suburbs. And if you look at like where most of the country lives, right? It's like, especially if you grew up in a rural area, right?
Yeah.
A lot of times you start to gravitate toward those suburbs and metro areas, because once you're,
well, unfortunately, life's not as sustainable anymore.
right. And that's kind of what I'm getting at.
Yeah.
That's where jobs are. So people are kind of forced to go there, which then like that next generation of kids, like who are now, and not kids, but like adults, who are your age, maybe a little younger, and you're what, 27, right? So we're talking that like mid 30s to like, getting close to that millennial, even though I don't like categorizing people like that because they don't all function the same way, because you're very much not a typical millennial, right?
Yeah.
But those folks came from a different upbringing, right? And not that it's better or worse, it's just different with access to different things. So your attention and what you are focused on growing up is, as far as your hobbies or your passions, were more diverse.
Yeah.
Because you just had more opportunity, because you were in spaces that provided more opportunity, right?
Yeah.
And so I look at it and look at the hunting industry and say, the people who are representing it at the top, and I'm not talking about ethics and morals, right? Because you could debate that, right? It's like, I'll just use the Drury's again as an example. I don't think there's anything that they do that's morally incorrect or ethically incorrect. I think they represent the hunting industry and the hunters in a good way. I think they always put their best foot forward and appreciate that from them. But are they truly kind of aligned and able, someone who is 22 years old thinking about like, hey, I hunted a little bit growing up with my dad, I'd really like to get into it, but there's no beacon in the hunting industry for them to look toward and say, hey, this person's like me. Because we're always, as much as we don't want to admit it, like people are they're always looking for, they're homogeneous, right? They're always looking for a group that looks like them to kind of identify with and be part of, right? And for that person, if I looked at myself now, like part of the reason, hunting became less of an important thing for me whenever I was a young kid is because I was into skateboarding, snowboarding, music, those things. I didn't know a single person who was a diehard dedicated hunter that was into any of those things.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? So whenever I looked for someone who looked like me, to say, hey, I can identify with that person, there wasn't one, right? And I feel like there's something there that like this next group of hunters, and maybe even my age, right? Like there's not someone who looks like them, acts like them, and has the same interests as them, right? It's like it's really hard for a 22-year-old kid to go, unless he grew up in like hunting is all he ever wanted to do. Then the Drury's make sense, right? But if he grew up in a suburban area, which most kids do now, right, or young adults do now, and they probably grew up going to shows, skateboarding, snowboarding, doing Brazilian jiu-jitsu, like whatever it is, right? It's like, who's that person that says, hey, hunting culture can still be part of your lifestyle. Even though it's not the main thing, it can still be part of it, because hunting, because all those things you did as a skateboarder, snowboarder, whatever, all those lessons you've learned and all the lessons you learned in hunting, they're all applicable back and forth between one another. Right? There's not like this segmentation that you have to be this, or this.
Well, I have a 3-year-old, and my wife said to me the other day, we need to talk about maybe putting our son into kickboxing.
Right.
And I'm like, oh, that's cool. And then as you think about it, it's kickboxing or baseball or soccer or other team sports, because those things culture views as a good thing for a growing kid.
Right.
In our culture now. Hunting, hiking, fishing are typically not something they're like, we need to get them into that.
Right.
Because people don't know or understand the life lessons that can come from that. Like I was just fishing with a guy yesterday who had never been fishing before, and we're on a creek, and there's a guy across from him, and he goes, well, we can't fish here. I said, no, there's like a understanding we're going to have. Like he's going to cast. Once he's out of the way, I'll cast. And there's like a respect.
Right.
But that wasn't inherent to me. Like I had to learn that from my dad.
Right.
But I learned it from fishing,
right.
Growing up. And so I think that mentality of like extreme sports, whatever it's kickboxing, there's such a correlation. And I don't think it's a replaceable correlation. It's like side by side. Like it's the same.
Yeah. Yeah. I just think that I just feel like there's a missed opportunity with with people, and I think that we could equally. I hate using the word recruit because I feel like it has a weird connotation.
Yeah.
Right? Like we could create another path for people to dive deeper into hunting if it was an applicable part of like their overall lifestyle that fit into the other things that they do.
Yep.
Right. So for like, I'll just give you an example. Like, so look at a guy like Jason Matzinger.
Yep.
Right. Into High Country, I think it's the show that he has. Right. Jason is a wonderful filmmaker.
Yeah.
Right. He hunts, nonstop, lives in Montana, works with a lot of huge hunting brands. I'm sure everyone out there listening probably knows who he is. If you don't, check him out.
Yep.
He's an incredible steward for hunting.
Yeah.
Conservation, the whole nine. Like if you're going to build like a hunter, right, and say like, here's a guy who does it the right way, has the passion, all those things, right? Like he's a really good example, right? Loves snowboarding, right?
Yeah.
And so it's that idea that like you don't have to give up one to have the other.
Which is funny. I was not surprised when I saw that.
I wasn't either.
No, I saw like, whatever on social media somewhere. I saw a picture of him snowboarding, and I was not surprised at all. I'm like, oh, cool.
Yeah.
Because I don't know why, but in my brain I just connected. But that's because I have an action sports background. I don't have a hunting background.
Right.
So to me, they have just gone hand in hand.
Right.
Because I've taken the same principles and kind of swapped it over.
Right.
And so when I see people in the media or friends that I know who hunt, who also are like, I can't wait for ski season.
Mm-hmm.
The only reason I personally stopped snowboarding is because it was in deer season.
Right.
So I just said financially, time management wise as well, I don't have the ability to do both.
I think that's a good point, because I think what I'm saying isn't necessarily from a financial perspective. You always have to pick and choose, right? Like no one has, well, I shouldn't say no one. Few people have the means to just do whatever they want, whenever they want, right? And I'm certainly not.
And I wanted to do them well,
right? And you prioritize, right?
Yep.
And so, hey, for the person whose priority is snowboarding and they're just not going to hunt as often, like I get it. You know what I mean? Not suggesting that it should be the focus on hunting. I'm more thinking of the approach to hunting, the quality of lifestyle that you get. Like it can be a part of all these other things, and I think we need to look at ways to integrate ourselves into those different lifestyles. Like hunting. Yeah. I'm going to frame this really poorly, but this is the best way I can kind of figure out how to say it. Is like hunting should be part of like the snowboard culture. Hunting could, or shouldn't be, shouldn't say should, could be. Mm-hmm. Hunting could be part of a skateboard culture.
Yeah.
Hunting could be part of big wave surfer culture. We were just talking about Shane Dorian.
Yeah, Shane. Huge
big wave surfer in Hawaii.
Yep.
Hardcore hunter.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? And it's that type of idea where you're starting to see more of these people, because there's benefits outside of like the idea of dedication, perseverance, like all those things that we talk about whenever you do really tough hunts. There's also the aspect of like the health aspect of it. Like athletes are always trying to get an advantage. Like you're seeing it more and more, I think, in MMA because of a guy like Chad Mendes, right?
Yeah.
Like, his approach to hunting was, he loves to hunt, but part of it was it supported the healthy lifestyle he needed to lead. Yeah. So he was in top condition to be able to perform as an elite level fighter. You know what I mean? So it became part of his hunting or part of his fighting lifestyle.
Yeah.
Right. And so I guess that's part more of what I'm saying is like making sure that we create opportunities and ways that hunting can interject itself and support maybe a lifestyle that hunting isn't the priority, but could be a really important part of for that person. You know what I mean?
Yep.
But I found out some interesting stuff about you, man. You showed me some motocross. Like, every time we hang out and talk, like I'm always learning something. Like I had no clue that you surfed until today. I had no clue that like you showed me you hitting a jump on a motocross bike that was like a 95-foot launch.
It was unfortunate.
It was unfortunate.
Yeah, it's just scary. No, it's because when I started, which is why I'm excited for, I don't know if I'm spilling beans, but this Why I Hunt series that you're talking about.
We're going to get into that here in a second.
Is because I when I started hunting, I basically stopped everything else.
Right.
I stopped really surfing. I stopped riding bikes. I stopped skating. I stopped snowboarding because it was kind of this transfer. I was like, I'm new to this. I don't want to be distracted. I just want to just get into hunting.
Right.
And now as I'm kind of getting my roots into hunting, and this next season will be my 4th season hunting, so it's kind of like I'm not like walking around with my head cut off anymore.
Right.
In a sense, I still have a ton to learn for sure, like a lot, but I'm starting to get back into like going surfing a little bit over the winter with my father-in-law, and my wife and I get the longboard out and maybe ride around the neighborhood. But then I started riding dirt bikes, and it's a ton of fun. But every time I get on a dirt bike, I'm like, if I get hurt
and can't hunt,
and well, yeah, I can't hunt, I can't do things around the house. I mean, my house is skinny and tall,
mm-hmm.
and there's a lot of stairs.
Right.
So I'll be living in the basement basically. But yeah, so I stopped talking about it. It kind of became not a part of my life.
Right.
But the one thing I love about action sports is it's a personal challenge.
Yeah.
You know, like with snowboarding, it's like, you know, you hear people are like, oh, I did a black diamond or I did a double black diamond.
Right.
For me, it was never about the color of the run, but the challenge of your line,
mm-hmm.
maybe per se. So did I push myself? Like if I got to the bottom and I didn't fall, it was kind of like, oh, I probably didn't push myself hard enough.
Right, right.
Or if I got to the bottom and wasn't out of breath,
right.
Oh, I didn't try hard enough.
Right.
And so it was always this challenge between me and the action I was doing.
Right.
So then when I started hunting, it was the same way.
Right.
Every time it was a learning curve.
And see, I almost feel like that's a mentality of, I mean, other athletes push themselves too, right? Whether it's team sports, but the individualized sports,
yeah,
there's just something different about it because there's no one to pick you up.
Yep.
Right. Even though you might be dedicated and you might be a volleyball player with a team, a basketball player, football player, whatever it is, but your effort could be less than maximum on certain plays, and your team around you can pick you up, or the play doesn't come to your side or whatever. Right.
Yeah.
With extreme sports and individualized sports like that, like it is all you, and so it's really apparent whenever you didn't go all in. Right. And that's something like that I find with like, you know, this is something that, you know, we talked about a little bit with Cody. It's just like that's very specific to like how a certain group of hunters hunt, where it's like they're looking to like, you know, they're looking to get after it.
Yep.
They're looking to do tough hunts. The more challenging, the better. They're not looking for the chip shot. You know what I mean? Now, look, if we all know there's a big deer living somewhere and we can easily go make that hunt happen, it's like, but that's also part of it is like the challenge strategically. Right. So it might physically not be demanding, but you had to put all the pieces together, which was a challenge, which then led you to success. But that was a nice segue for the Why I Hunt series, because that's one of the things that we want to try to, or that I would like to try to do here over the course of like the next year, is have some different folks on talking about why they hunt. And you're my first guinea pig.
Yeah.
to do that.
Do you know guinea pig tastes good?
I do not know.
I'm just kidding. Neither do I.
I used to have a guinea pig. I won't go into that story because it's a little lewd, but the, you know, I was thinking about just why I hunt. It's something I've been trying to reconcile for a while, because I think as we age, it changes over time, right?
100%.
Or as we experience, maybe age is the wrong word, but as we experience, it changes over time. And I've tried to think about it for me, and I think for me especially, it's changed a lot probably over like the past 4 years or so.
Yeah.
And I'm still searching for the answer, right? Because there's a lot of reasons why. But I wanted to do a series, and this isn't necessarily the mini series because we're talking about a lot more than hunting on this, but like this is the first time I'm really kind of teeing it up. It's a really simple question.
Yeah.
Why I hunt. But if you've ever heard someone try to answer it, it's an extremely complex answer.
Yep.
And people start to grasp at a lot of different things, because I don't think it's any one thing, and they have a hard time. And I think answering this question and being able to communicate it will be important for how hunting is viewed by non-hunters in general, right?
Yeah.
Just because the way we answer this question, you know, just for example, I like to trophy hunt could be an answer.
Yeah.
It could be just a real short answer, right? And that's a perfectly fine answer.
Yep.
But that message, how you frame that to people who aren't hunters, is going to have an impact on how they view hunting, right? And I'm just using
100%.
that as an example, because it's much more nuanced than just that one answer. So I'm just giving a very generic kind of, you know, image of this. So for you, let's peel the onion a little bit, man. Why do you hunt?
Yeah. And when you asked me that question earlier, instantly in my head, I'm like, whoa, why do I hunt? Because I've asked people that question and I've answered that question, and I feel like every time you could get a different answer. I think back to how did I start hunting? That's a typical question that you is easier to answer.
Yeah.
Because people either they grew up hunting or my dad drug me out hunting.
Yep.
Or, I won a hunt, at a raffle, or there's all these different things. For me, why I hunt has to do a lot of from my growing up.
Mm-hmm.
It was just this mystery to me,
mm-hmm.
hunting. Growing up in Seattle, I'm outside of Seattle, but still in the city.
Mm-hmm.
And my dad was in law enforcement, and we had guns, and I was like, let's hunt. And he, guns were for work.
Right.
So we shot guns a few times growing up, but it was just strictly to know how to use a firearm.
Because you had him in the house.
Yep.
Right.
We had him in the house. He had him locked up, but he was like, they will know how to be responsible gun owners. So I was never scared of guns, but they were for work.
Right.
And I always wanted to hunt. And I remember growing up always asking for a shotgun because I just figured that's what you hunt with was a shotgun.
Right.
And it wasn't until I was 22 that I got a shotgun. And I just told my friend, I said, hey, I want to hunt. Still at that point, I had no idea really why, other than this mystery of like, what is it about? I loved being outside. And so we went to hunter safety class, and we were totally, the odd one out there. Like, I'm wearing skinny jeans with rips in them and skate shoes, and a baggy sweatshirt.
Which again goes back to what we were talking about before,
Yeah.
like creating that opportunity that it's okay for people who are into like hunting's not their life, that there is an entry point for you.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And so we take the hunter safety course, we get our hunter safety, and I went duck hunting, and I killed a duck. And then it was like, oh my goodness, what do we do now? So we plucked it, we ate it. And it was, I think at that moment where I was in my house, my sister was there as well. She would kind of help cook it.
Mm-hmm.
I was like, the opportunities are endless.
Mm-hmm.
And two best friends, me and my good friend did it together. Ours was our first time ever. Mm-hmm. And the joy that we had and the memories we made from getting up at 1 a.m. to go out to this duck spot, hike out there and set up in the middle of the night and fall asleep and wake up. It was just the memories we made from one time. It was like, there's so many opportunities for this. And I feel like my life was bettered from that moment.
Right.
And then I thought back to what would I be doing if I wasn't doing this?
Right.
And it was like, this activity has now bettered my life. And now to having a family where I can provide meat, like quality meat that we like to enjoy to eat at a low cost is very enjoyable to me. But it's something different. It's more than that. It's like, I say spiritual, but it is just this time that I get to get out and challenge myself, my like inner being, to get out and enjoy nature and set goals and achieve them,
Right.
And it's not a season by season thing for me. So when I first started, it was like, all right, I have to, Pennsylvania is a 1 buck state. I moved here and I was like, all right, I have to kill a buck. I have to kill a buck. And that was my goal because I realized in my head, I have 1 buck take. I have to kill a buck before the season's over. So I killed a buck. And then that next year, it was like, I really wanted to kill a certain buck. So I ended up not killing a buck. And I caught a lot of heat for it.
Right.
Guys were like, oh, you didn't kill a buck last season, huh? But to me, I had realized at that moment that hunting had become more than a seasonal thing for me.
Yeah.
It was a bigger picture. And I think that's that millennial breakdown is like, we were just talking about it. Millennials, my generation, they think 6 to 9 months ahead. That's it. But past that, they're not thinking about that.
Right.
So they're thinking right in the moment, what is going to benefit me? And now being older and maturing and having kids and a wife and having a life, I'm now thinking farther ahead. And so my hunting goals are not just right here in the moment. They're long term,
right. Right.
And so for me, it's like now I'm hunting to prepare myself to get my son hunting. So when I hunt or when I acquire a place to hunt or I find new access, my first thought is like, oh, this would be an easy hike in for my son. So it has changed. So a year ago, my answer to why I hunt would be different.
Right.
Than it is now.
Right. So you talked a little bit about the intro into hunting, like you created like the opportunity and like, and you were just like, it bettered your life. And you were like, how many other opportunities are out there?
Yeah.
Right. And you started there. The last thing you said, you started projecting out a little further. Like, what does this mean long term? And before we go there, I want to circle back to the spirituality part of it. I think it's interesting that you mentioned that for a couple of reasons. I feel similar to you that is, it's a very, and we're going to get a little hippy dippy here. Right. But I think a lot of folks out there listening probably feel the same way. Like there's
Yep.
like whether you call it a spirituality thing
Mhm.
or a connection,
Yep.
like whatever it is. I think it's interesting that you mentioned that because you have spirituality in another place,
Yeah.
right? Which is
Yeah.
not just your job, but like that part of your life is very important
Yep.
to you in a different capacity than hunting.
Yeah.
Is there a similarity between the two?
Yeah.
Does one feed the other? Like how? Like can you just talk about that a little bit?
Yeah, and that's one of the things I love about our relationship is like we have different spiritual beliefs.
Yeah.
Or let me go even further, religious beliefs.
Right.
You know, so where like we differ.
Yep.
But it's cool because we can respect one another.
Mm-hmm.
You know, and I'll invite you to things that my church does or events, and we have a common respect in that, which is really
Yep.
cool. And for me, growing up in a house that always went to church and whatnot, it wasn't until later in life, similar with hunting, till I was 19 that I actually was like, man, I do now have a religious belief,
Right.
a spiritual belief, in a relationship with God. This idea of that.
Right.
And so when I started getting into hunting, man, my life is so busy
Mm-hmm.
that it almost stuff kind of clouds that spirituality.
Mm-hmm.
And I'm like, you get tunnel vision, you're doing stuff, you're task oriented, you're goal oriented, and you forget the overall picture.
Right.
So for me, like stress, anxiety, it was just inevitable for me.
Mm-hmm.
I've always kind of dealt with that. And then getting into the woods where you're like, I'm going to strap myself to a tree and not move for hours.
Right.
It's this like, if you were to tell my parents, when my parents heard I was doing this, like, how do you sit for that long? I'm like, I don't know. I have no idea. They're like, how do you stay still for so long? I'm like, I don't know. But there's something about it where I sit, they feed each other. So like I have my spiritual beliefs. And then when I'm in the woods, they are accentuated.
Mm-hmm.
It's like, because I have a belief on like how the world got to be or whatever. And
Right.
I'm not a scientist. It's just what I firmly believe. And so when I'm in the woods, it's accentuated. And there's just a relaxation and a peace. And man, when I come out of the woods, it's like I've kind of reset.
Mm-hmm.
You hit the reset button.
Yeah.
Which has even more played a role into hunting is not seasonal,
Mm-hmm.
And I don't like when these guys are like, hunting's not a sport, it's a lifestyle. It's
Right.
like, but it is though.
Yeah.
For me, and I don't know if I would say it's a lifestyle. I would just say it's a part of my life.
Which again goes back to what we were talking about before. It's like creating those opportunities for people to have different lifestyles for hunting to be part of it. Let me ask this, as far as like, do you think as hunters we do, and we'll take social media into this ball of wax as well, because I think it's important an important context because that's where a lot of communication happens today. Do you think that we're doing a good job of communicating the reasons why we hunt? And like I said when we started talking about this topic, I don't think that anyone has a wrong answer.
Yeah.
Right? In the one word answer, right? Meat hunt, trophy hunt, spiritual connection, whatever it is, right?
Yeah.
If we just broke it down to a statement, I don't think any of them are wrong. So I don't want anyone to get the wrong idea here that I think that there's one that's good or bad.
Mm-hmm.
I think the context we provide around it is extremely important. So
Yeah.
regardless of what your answer is, right?
Yep.
One of those handful of answers that I just gave an example of.
Yep.
Do you think we as hunters do a good job contextualizing our answer to make sure that it's understood by the non-hunting public, where exactly we're coming from, and that it's not necessarily a combative or a statement or answer that's going to create a lot of tension?
Yeah. No, I think it's getting better, because growing up, when I saw hunting, it was a newspaper headline or it was a YouTube clip, but they were short, and it was always just like rock music to a kill,
right?
Yeah. But I think with the advancement of videography, photography, people are starting to tell their stories more,
right?
Which I'm a huge story person. Like I love to talk. I like to sit down for coffee and hear about it. So I'm less of a fan of these just like highlight reels of animals getting killed anymore.
Right.
Because I want to know the story. Like that's why I love backcountry hunting so much, and these videos of like a sheep hunt, because it's not just the killing of the sheep, but it's like, man, how did you get there?
Right.
And people go, then they have more to connect to.
Yeah.
Oh, I like to hike, or I like to do that, or that's really cool. So I think the hunting society is getting better at sharing their story.
Mm-hmm.
But I think this needs to be a campaign on why I hunt.
Mm-hmm.
But I think we need to understand that it's going to be different than you hunt.
That's so right there is kind of the rub.
Yep.
Right. Is getting a group of folks who, have different points of view. I mean, you look at anything, doesn't matter what it is, right?
Yeah.
You look at any topic in hunting, whether it's CWD,
Yep.
right, and what to do with that, right?
Yeah.
You throw that out into a room of 10 hunters, you're going to get 10 different opinions on
Yep.
like how it should be managed and,
Yeah.
and what its effective management looks like versus not, right? It's just, you could talk about camo, right?
Yeah.
And like what camo works, what doesn't work, and you'll have 10 different, points of view on that as well. I think this is going to sound really weird, but I think maybe not really weird, but maybe hard to swallow might be a better way to put it. Going back to what we were talking about earlier, we're looking at extreme sports and figuring out how hunting fits into like these different lifestyles. I think that we could take a valuable lesson from some of those countercultures.
Yeah.
Right. Because if you think about it, really, hunting is a counterculture.
Yeah.
It's a very small population of people. Right.
Yep.
So kind of by definition, it is a counterculture. Right?
Yeah.
We are not the mainstream. Now,
Yep.
outside of hunting, we might be very much mainstream, right?
Yeah.
Where it's like I have the 2.5 kids and the
Yep.
house, the regular job, like those things, right?
Yeah.
But like hunting itself is kind of counterculture-ish, right? And so I think what some of these other countercultures have done and why they've been able to thrive and become, and I don't want to say mainstream isn't a bad thing, but accept it, right? Because I remember when I grew up skateboarding was seen as like heathenistic.
Yeah.
Right? It was like you were a dirtbag,
Yep.
like troublesome youth riding a skateboard, listening to the devil's music.
You probably killed somebody. You probably do drugs.
Right.
Like your
Now
grandma
all of a
hates
sudden, like it's an accepted norm, right?
Yep.
Like if you skateboard as a kid growing up today, it's like, oh, cool.
Yeah.
Right. I think what hunting can take from some of these, and I'm sorry I keep using skateboarding, but that's what I did growing up, so I'm familiar with it.
And I have a reason why I think skateboarding changed. This is a small Walmart started selling skateboards.
Yeah. Yeah.
And then moms and the skateboards were where? In the toy aisle.
Right.
So all of a sudden there was like a mom or a dad in Walmart or Target. I remember Target specifically. And they were like, there's a skateboard.
Yeah.
And it started to become normalized. Like I remember the first time I'm like, there's a skateboard in Target.
Right.
Like maybe my mom will let me get it because it's in Target.
Yeah.
It's not, I'm not getting it from like
I remember
quote unquote skate shop that had incense burning out front and dark, Metallica playing out front.
listening to rock and roll or skate punk.
We had
or
a
whatever.
Vans off the wall store in my town, and it was like I wasn't allowed to even go by there because it was bad. They were like, don't go there.
Right. Yeah. So I think what some of these countercultures did really well outside of like the the mainstream marketing, getting into Walmart and Target.
Yeah.
But even prior to that so one of the things you'll hear employers talk about a lot is building culture.
Yep.
Right. Everyone wants to figure out how to build culture because if you build a winning culture, your business, your company wins. I feel like it's the same way and you create good leadership.
Yeah.
Right. That's kind of what happens when you have a good culture. And your culture doesn't come from your leadership. Your culture comes from the people of your company building the fabric of your culture. That's how it works. It percolates from the bottom up. Like it doesn't ever come from the top down because that just feels like people making mandates and giving directives, right?
Yeah.
So I think the same thing kind of happens in some of these counterculture groups where because they are so, and I don't want to say anti-authority because that's the wrong word. Because they're more democratic, might be a better way to put it. They don't care where the idea comes from or who owns it. They all kind of take ownership of a small piece of it and kind of let it just become what it's going to become from the group.
Yeah.
Right. Whereas I feel like hunting is often trying to be controlled by certain larger groups of people or more influential groups of people are trying to kind of control what the hunting culture ends up becoming because they want it to stay this thing historically. Right.
Yeah.
It's this nostalgia that they're captivated by and like trapped by.
Yeah.
Right. And so folks are reluctant to let it just kind of evolve and become what it's going to become. Right. And I think that that's one thing that counterculture groups have always done really well. Like the whole idea of the counterculture was that there were no rules. There were no quote unquote leaders of it, right?
Yeah.
It was just a group of like-minded people all moving in one kind of similar direction with one kind of similar thought, like ideas, right? Or ethics or morals or whatever you want to call them, right? I think what hunting has done, and maybe somewhat by design, maybe not, but I think what's hurting it is that we're often saying, or maybe we're not saying, maybe it's the perception of others, that if you're coming into this, there's a set way that it happens.
Yeah. Oh, exactly.
There's a set way that you have to act. There's a set kind of behaviors and there's a certain type of person you have to be to do this, right?
Yeah.
And I'm probably framing it really poorly, but it doesn't feel inclusive.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Where these other kind of counterculture groups feel inclusive, and that's why the youth gravitate toward them, because they want to often move towards something where they feel like they belong and that they can kind of take ownership of and help it become what it's going to become.
Yeah.
Where hunting kind of feels a little stodgy.
Yeah.
A little older, not something that's going to be real open-minded and accepting.
Yeah.
Not something that's going to allow me to put my thumbprint on it and make it my own.
Yeah.
But I feel like there's this group of hunters now that are becoming more. I think the hunting public does it to a degree.
Yeah.
Right? They're kind of doing things on their own terms. But look, there's still, I think, and I love those guys. It's like Zach's great. He's been on the show. I've had Aaron on the show before. Like, good dudes. I've talked to them at ATA. But they're still, I mean, what they're doing media-wise is different, but they still kind of fall in that like hunt culture kind of
because they grew up
paradigm. Right.
And for me, I can relate, because in Washington, if you hunted deer, we were on the west side of the state. If you were a deer or elk or a bear hunter, you had a camp that you went to every year. And it was like you and a group of your friends took your campers or your trailers or whatever over the mountains and did like a week-long camp. It was deer camp. And that was it. And if you weren't involved in that, you didn't really, I mean, I never heard of anyone hunting.
Right.
And so it was exclusive.
Yeah.
And so there was no way, like, I never hunted, I didn't own a gun, I didn't own a bow. You're going to go up to somebody and be like, can I come to your camp that you've been doing for X amount of years with all your bed? No, I'm not going to get an invite.
Right.
And so you're left out on your own to go, I just got to figure it out. That's why duck hunting was so accessible, because of the amount of water. And it's like, oh, I can just drive down here and try to shoot a duck.
Right.
Like, it was so easy.
Right.
In a sense, quote unquote.
Right. And I think what, Zach and Aaron, those guys are doing is awesome, because they're kind of doing something. They're going out on land where anybody can go to and saying, look, you can do this. Right. So that's a component of opening it up. But as far as like introducing new lifestyles to it, right? I feel like, it's got to be, I don't want to say more extreme, but it has to be more diverse.
Yeah.
Right. It's like, and that's what I'm really kind of looking for. It's like, again, great dudes. And I'm probably part of this as well. Like, we look the same, act the same. And so it's like, we don't feel like we're any different from like the hunting like group. Right. But then you have people maybe like a Donnie Wilson, right?
Yeah.
Who doesn't look the same, doesn't act the same, and is kind of like the extreme sports version of hunting to a degree, right? He's like, I'm not really going to wear much camo, if any at all. I'm going to go with like some drab colors and solids of like wool or whatever, and then I'm going to go do a sheep hunt. And I'm going to get after it, and that's different, right? And so it's like, how do you find more guys like that, or like a Shane Dorian, or like, Jeff Raleigh, who's like a legendary skateboarder, right? Who's big into hunting, and say, here are some examples of guys that are like big in these different areas, right? And these countercultures for which hunting is a very important part of their lifestyle. Yeah. That they figured out a way to kind of marry those two together. And how do you help create them as like icons to put in front of younger people to say, hey, this guy's a big wave surfer. Yeah. I live in California and surf. I'd love to try hunting. Yeah. You know what I mean? Like, how do you, like, it's trying to create that opportunity, right? And those kind of optics and visuals, and so I think that to me, I think is going to be something important as we kind of go forward and figure out what this hunting thing looks like, because we can't fish from the same dry pond, you know what I mean? And grow numbers. And it's not just going to be solved by access. No, opening up more access. It's not going to be solved by like the normal forms of recruitment, and not, look, QDMA is doing a great job. BHA is doing a great job. Everyone's doing their part to try to do it. But I feel like if we're looking at it as a marketing problem, because that's really what it is. If you look at it, it's like it's a business problem we're trying to solve, right?
Yep.
If you look at hunting as a business, and we have a base of X that the number is dwindling, right?
Yep.
We have to figure out, if you're a business and that product is starting to is going on the decline,
Yeah.
you either need to create a new product, right? A secondary product, right?
Yeah.
Which you can't create a new hunting product necessarily, or you have to find out, how can we now position this product into a new market and expand the market?
Yep.
You know, and that, I think, is where hunting is at. It's like, what are the other markets that we've not tapped, and how do we tap them? What's the strategic move to make that happen?
Yeah.
You know, and to me, it's fundamentally a business problem if you tear it down to its core.
Yep.
And that's kind of how, and I'm not saying that we just go out and like market the crap out of ourselves to like all these countercultures, because it's got to be genuine.
Yeah.
And so you have to have some leaders in different positions to do that, to kind of hang the hunting hat on, so to speak. But it means you have to start to show up and look like, sound like, and appreciate these different diverse kind of backgrounds of people's interests, likings, and lifestyles, and say, hey, you're into snorkeling.
Yeah.
Hunting's into snorkeling.
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
Spearfishing.
Yeah, we can be part of that. You know, and we can, there's people like you that do this, or whatever the case is.
Yeah.
I don't know. It's just something like recently I've kind of gotten a little bit more passionate about, because
and I think it's going to develop the more time you spend on it.
Mm-hmm.
And I think authenticity and teachability is going to be huge
mm-hmm.
for us to say, like, all right, what if this means I have to sacrifice something else?
Mm-hmm.
So maybe it's a hunting spot,
mm-hmm.
because you want to bring somebody else into it.
Yep.
You know, in my head, I kind of have some spots that I'll never take anybody.
Right.
But what if sacrificing that means the furthering and the education of somebody else?
Right.
Or what if somebody, you know, whatever, it's a media type to say, like, let's do some sort of media focus on blank, and that's going to involve me giving up something that I hold personal.
Right.
Am I willing to do that to further this idea of involving hunting into other areas of the world?
How much more special does that thing become when it's able to have a larger impact too?
Exactly.
Right. You know what I mean? So where it's like, for me, it's like I hold this really close because it's special to me, but like it's almost like a legacy.
Yep.
Right. You can't build a legacy by being a protectionist. Right. It's like you build a legacy by being a person who kind of opens up their boundaries and says, look, I just want to be here to be a resource.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? And use me as you will, or as you would like, or however I can help. Right. It's like, that's how you then start to create a legacy as a person, right? Or as a company, or whatever. So I think that you're right. I think looking at it as, I think everyone looking at the resources that they have and saying, like, is there a way that I can make a difference in that regard? And we're getting off topic a little bit, but
I think legacy has a huge, as soon as you said that, I'm like, that's exactly why I hunt, is like, you could ask people, what's the type of legacy you would like to leave from your hunting career or time or whatever? Is it you want to be able to die and say, I've killed 30 Boone and Crockett deer? Is that your legacy? If so, it's going to make you a certain type of hunter. Right. Or are you going to say, no, that's wrong. That's awesome. Yeah. You know, I've killed 82, by the way, just if anyone cares. No, I'm just kidding. But I really have not. If anyone thought that was true, it was a lie. Yeah. Or is your legacy like, I want, you know, when I stop hunting, I want to look back and see my 2 kids bringing their kids into hunting? Is that a legacy I want to leave? Or I want to have brought in 25 new hunters, you know, or taught a hunter safety class. What's the legacy you want to leave? I was amazed when I took my hunter safety class. The guy that was giving it was, I don't know, really old. Right. You know, 40. Right. Yeah. Well, yeah. Hey, you know, one foot in the grave, man. No. He was pretty old, but he'd been doing it like for, I mean, I want to say it was like 35 years. He'd been teaching the same class. And I was like, that is awesome. He has left this legacy of bringing in thousands of people into the hunting community. Yep. So why you hunt? What's the legacy you want to leave? You know,
I almost feel like there needs to be, you know, we have the nonprofit groups like, again, BHA, QDMA, that are doing good work, different areas, right? But they have similar, I shouldn't say similar goals. They have some similar goals in terms of like access and stuff like that. Impactful goals, right? And they overlap at times, which is great, right? I almost feel like there needs to be some type of group whose focus is on literally kind of creating those offshoot opportunities to work into some of those counterculture lifestyles.
Yeah.
Right. Because I think that that's a worthwhile, because that's a legacy unto itself. Right.
Yeah.
I think the BHAs and the QDMAs are going to leave a legacy. They already are. Right. Because they're already creating these different opportunities for people and securing, access for future generations. Like whatever, they're doing all those great things. But there's a human element of it that I think we're missing beyond just like the recruitment, which I know QDMA is doing. But I think there's other avenues of recruitment that could be had or that could be done that would create another opportunity to leave an additional legacy for a group. Right? Yeah. Maybe I should start one. I don't know.
Yeah.
But I think we often run to this, trying to figure out how to say this without discrediting like the good work a lot of people are doing. But I think some of these movements that we have around the nonprofit space become just like buzzwords that people use to sound relevant.
Yeah.
Right. So I'll give you an example. Like I think it's funny. Like people will say, "Oh man, I love that guy." Do you really love that guy? You know what I mean? It's that word gets thrown around so often that it doesn't really mean anything anymore.
Yeah.
Right. And so anyone who wants to be considered in the know or in the club, it's like, talking about access or whatever. It's these buzzwords you hear people use, but are you actually going out and doing anything to affect that?
Yeah.
You know what I mean? If you are, great. If not, I'm not condemning you necessarily. I would just think about, am I doing as much as I can for the things that I believe in, right? But wouldn't it be cool if we created another one?
Yeah.
Which was, how do we fit in? How do we get these people who may feel like they don't belong and help them feel like they do belong, and actually this is just like the place they should be.
Yeah.
Right. I think that that's another important thing, but it's not sexy and no one's created like a magazine ad or wrote an article about it yet.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? So it doesn't get as much fanfare.
Yeah, no, it's huge.
But all right, well, we've been talking for a little over an hour here. You got some work to finish up.
Yep.
I've got to go to the soul sucking
I'm
place
sorry, man.
of the DMV to get my driver's license picture taken for my expiring license, which that place is quite possibly the worst place on the planet, the DMV.
Especially the one here in our little town.
Dude, I couldn't believe how many people were lined up this morning. Like I got there like before the place opened. There was already a line around the building.
Yeah. Sometimes I just drive by to look and laugh at people. Well,
you'll be laughing at me soon because I'm gonna head over. I'm hoping now that like it's lunchish time. I'm hoping like most of the morning rush is gone.
Literally, we had to change our addresses. My wife's like, "I'm gonna go to the DMV." I was like, "Okay,
pack a lunch in an
whatever."
overnight bag.
She comes back like 15 minutes later. I was like, "Oh, it's too busy." She goes, "No, I'm done."
That happened to my sister-in-law.
Are you serious? So then I go like 3 days later. It takes me 4 hours, and I'm like, God doesn't love me.
Right.
I have to sit. I must have done something wrong. I had to sit in the DMV for 4 hours and think about my life. It's like time out for adults.
My sister-in-law was traveling to, I forget where she was going, maybe South Africa. Actually, no, I think she was going to Germany this time. But she stopped into Philly first, and she had to get like a new photo ID or whatever for something.
Okay.
And so she went to this one, and she was literally in and out in 5 minutes. And my wife told me today, she's like, you're probably better off going later in the day. The morning rush will hit, and then no one will be there in the afternoon. That's probably when you want to go. So that's what we're going to try.
Yeah. Good luck.
All right. Thanks. Thanks for coming on, buddy.
Yeah. Thanks for having me on. It's always a pleasure.
All right, folks. That is a wrap for today's show. I'd like to thank Wilson for joining. Be sure to give him a follow on the old Instagram at wilson.mcswain. Of course, I want to thank all of you for listening. And if you haven't yet, please head over to iTunes and leave us a 5-star rating. And be sure to subscribe to the podcast if you haven't already done so. It would be super rad if you could do those two things for us. Before we shut this thing down, we need to give a big shout out to our partners who continue to help us make this podcast possible. Exodus Outdoor Gear, Skull Brew Coffee Company, Ozonics, Obsession Bows, Ramcat Broadheads, Trophy Taker Rests, and Dead Downwind. And until next time, we'll see y'all.
November's on my heels, makes me proud, makes me steal. I could show you through the door. I ain't welcome anymore. A long time coming, if it all. It takes a special knowing to color for. Damaged heads, broken letters. visualize yourself in numbers, but I